Hi. So it's well documented there are any number of ways for actors to access character and for directors to direct them. From Mike Leigh and his master improv technique to Daniel Day-Lewis living in character, to James Cameron or David Lean employing actors perhaps for what they already know they can do, confident they can act and letting them do their thing whilst focusing on the look, the design, the lighting and the shot composition. It's up to you to work out what sort of a director you are and what you want from your actors. I'm not about to tell you that, but I can furnish you with a set of tools that can at least help bridge that communication gap. Any given scene starts at a point A and ends at a point B. The story progresses. In order for that to happen, if there are indeed actors in that scene, then they go on a kind of mini journey. Either something happens to them or they instigate change. Maybe someone gets shot. Maybe someone starts an argument, whether on purpose or not. The list is of course endless. But the point remains that a character enters the scene in one space emotionally and ends the scene in another. But do they know beforehand what that end state will be or no? Do they know what their actions will be given certain stimuli or not? A killer can go to a house in the belief they are going to shoot the occupant and then make their escape. If they are the villain or hero of the film, they may well get away with it. It might be super slick and all you're meant to do as an audience is sit back and enjoy the perfection of the execution. But other times, someone may not know that in that same scene they're going to die, or even that they're going to kill someone. It comes as a surprise, either as a result of a struggle, an accident, or perhaps their own anger or passion in the moment. Maybe they learn something that pushes them over the edge. So then it becomes about how the character arrived at that situation. Do they have anger issues? How do they kill? What do they do immediately after and then a while after? Are they the type to then kill themselves in remorse or hand themselves in, or instead do a runner having cleaned the crime scene of all their fingerprints? What all this boils down to is the character and what is true to the character. We've all seen this, where the character has done something and then reacted straight afterwards in a very particular way, and we've smiled to ourselves because it felt true. True to how they would respond, even if it was unexpected, or maybe they responded in a particular way because something else, another agenda or force, was at play that we don't know anything about until a bit later on, as it's revealed to us. All of this is so important for both the actor and the director to understand, it being there in the screenplay in the first place. So often it's the director who is, in part, the interpreter of the screenplay, and so often the actor is never allowed to talk to the writer. Why? Is this because the director's scared of being made redundant? In any case, a scene, apart from needing to get from point F to point G within a film that takes us from point A to point Z, has characters in it that are going on their own journey too within that framework. They enter a room with a series of objectives and a series of obstacles that are potentially going to prevent them achieving their objectives. This is our life. We never do anything without an objective in mind, be it to get the shopping in, go to the bathroom, or speak to someone. There's a reason behind our actions. Now, I could go into the minutiae of this forever and a day, but I'm going to keep things as brief as possible, make the scene really simple, break it down to the bare bones to illustrate the point I'm trying to make. So an actor could enter a room with objectives on several levels. He wants to persuade his girlfriend to let him go on a boys' holiday with his mates to Mexico, and depending upon their history together, on how possessive she may or may not be, on how secure she feels both within herself and with her partner, it may be an easy discussion, or it may not. Depending how controlling he is, how manipulative he may be, how trustworthy, how in love he is, will also have a strong bearing on how this conversation goes. So let's say she's in the kitchen. He comes in and starts a conversation. He may elect to pretend his main objective is to get a glass of water and the conversation is incidental, said almost in passing. He now has more than one objective: to quench his thirst and to square making a trip with the boys with his partner. But what if they have very little money? This, of course, is another obstacle blocking his objective. How does he square spending money on a jolly in Mexico when they're having trouble with the rent, the car payments and his college fees? One goal in writing a good script is to find ways to heighten the stakes and make things difficult for our protagonists. So if it were merely a case of him swanning in, grabbing a bottle from the fridge, calling over to her as she's watching Netflix on the sofa. Hey babe, the boys are going to Cancun first week of July. Okay, I'll go along. Sure, sounds great. Love ya. And he exits. Then you better hope the action has something bigger and better in store if you want to keep an audience in their seats. However, you take these very same lines and change the intention behind them, then it starts to get more interesting. What if he has a history of beating her up? Read them again. What if she's having an affair? Read them again. What if he doesn't want to go and needs her to stop him going, but has difficulty saying no to his mates? Read them again. So you can see the intention kind of becomes everything. And the intention is driven by character and their arc through the film, who they are and what they're essentially going after, what they want. Now, this is the point I was always aiming to get to. Where the actor comes in is, of course, about intention and how they're portrayed. It's about where this scene is, not only in the script, but where it lies in the shooting of that script. Say it's scene 34, but it gets shot after scene 117, but before scene 13, due to location taking precedence. Then it's really important for the actors to have a handle on where they are and what their characters know and don't know at that point in the story. But, and this is most important, it's also about what their intentions are based upon. Every time anyone speaks, we do so because we have a purpose in doing so. We want to communicate an idea, a desire, a feeling, an opinion. We want something. And this is where I feel far too many directors have it wrong in the way they communicate with their actors. They feel it quite all right to give line readings. So they simply spout the line with an inflection born of their intention behind the line, then expect the actor to simply repeat parrot fashion. I've seen so many directors doing this, and they have absolutely no idea how reductive this can be to an actor. They aren't parrots or mimics. Something dies within an actor the moment this sort of thing happens. All it does is illustrate how poor the director's understanding is of the dynamic they're in and all the rich possibilities that lay at their feet. I've seen it over and over. Even big directors do it because they've got to a place where they can afford the best actors able to absorb what they're saying, forgive them internally, then do the process they need to do for themselves as they realise the director, bless them, is limited. So how to deal with this requirement for some sentiment or meaning for the words? Now, as actors, one way forward is to utilise something called actions. We action every sentence uttered with a purpose, a verb, or a doing word. What this does is gives every sentence a distinct purpose for being there. Hey babe, the boys are going to Cancun the first week of July. Okay, I go along. So let's action the first sentence. Hey babe. With to. To what? And this is where it's so interesting, because you can choose anything that makes sense to that character within the framework of the film as a whole and within the scene itself. Now, how these lines are actioned often helps the actors in their quest to learn them in the first place. So changing them is potentially going to trip them up, but not necessarily. I'd say though that the sooner a map of objectives and actions are achieved prior to the expense of the shoot being assembled, the better. So within a script you already have, just take some time to action every sentence. Ideally, when you're making a movie, you'd do this with the actors prior to the shoot. Be sure to action every line up to a full stop, and then action the next line differently. This brings instant colour to the words, but it's also very clear. Clear to an audience and clear to the actor playing it. It's when these actions aren't clear that performances become generalised and audiences switch off internally. Too often in bad films, it means this basic work is forgotten. Just be sure to have the characters' goals, their objectives in mind as you go along. The camera sees thought. I'll say that again. The camera sees thought. If the thought is there in the mind of the actor, the camera captures it. This is why sometimes we can see the actor says something, but their mind is on something else, and it's the other thing that they're thinking about that the audience reads and understands, whether they consciously check in on it or not. This in turn is also what screenwriters and gurus are talking about when they're on about subtext, where they're writing one thing but inviting the actors to mean another. This is a great way into that. So if you are writing a story, then start thinking about it in these terms at concept stage. I guarantee it'll surprise you. Don't worry, I'll illustrate what I mean a little bit later on.